We were told this mission was beneath us. I of course agreed. After all, who would volunteer to weigh cycles observing a species whose greatest cultural exports appear to be an obsession with frying meat between bread and a curious addiction to watching other members of their species argue loudly on glowing screens? Yet the High Council insisted. Every galactic army had pulled its fleets from this backwater planet, uninterested in the stumbling bipeds who called themselves humans. Only my unit was left to perform what amounted to pest control, or at best, biological cataloging. I am not a sentimental being, but even I will admit the assignment sounded simple enough. Study, record, dismiss. What could such primitives teach us? They still rely on combustion engines. Combustion, as though setting fire to liquids, is a sensible way to move metal boxes. Their communication system is riddled with something they call emojis, tiny pictures used to represent emotions they cannot articulate in words. One is a smiling pile of brown matter with eyes. My colleagues laughed for 3 cycles straight when they saw it. And then there is their cuisine. If microwave burritos can be called cuisine at all, entire supply chains exist for wrapping protein paste in synthetic bread and detonating it with radiation. They eat it willingly, repeatedly, even affectionately. I am told it is considered comfort food. The only comfort I found was that we would not be staying long enough to study their digestion. Still, procedure is procedure. My squad of 4 was dispatched to a remote area of their northern continent. We hovered above an expanse of forest, where sensors located an isolated subject. Male, mid-30s by their crude, chronological measurement. Alone. Perfect. He was seated by a fire at the edge of a riverbank, staring into the flames with the expression of a creature lost in thought. Perhaps mourning his lack of streaming service signal. We disabled him with the standard paralysis beam. Efficient, silent, flawless. Or so it should have been. His eyes shifted at the last moment, catching sight of us through the distortion field. No scream, no futile attempt to run. Just one blink. And I swear, that blink carried amusement. As if he knew something we did not. Preposterous, of course. Still, it unsettled me enough to record it in the log. We transported him aboard with little resistance. His body remained still, his breathing steady. I had expected drool, perhaps a whimper. Instead, his lips curled slightly, almost a smile. I considered it a facial twitch, nothing more. My colleagues took to mocking the specimen immediately. "This is what they send to war," sneered Vexer, our medic, poking at the human's arm. "Soft, barely armored." I added my own observation. "He smells faintly of charred meat, and a chemical compound I cannot place." One of the others suggested it was the burrito phenomenon again. Laughter rippled across the chamber. We placed him in stasis for transport, or we thought we did. The stasis chamber registered anomalies, but we dismissed them as equipment fatigue. After all, who among us truly believed this creature could resist our technology? As we left orbit, I reflected on the futility of our mission. There were rumors, yes, delightful rumors, that humans had once sent their own kind to the moon using tin cans strapped to explosions. That they launched satellites barely capable of taking photographs of their own feet. How advanced could such a people be? The most threatening headline I had read from their data streams involved something called Florida Man. We initially believed Florida Man to be a rogue soldier, a genetic super experiment gone wrong. Eventually we learned he was common, a recurring archetype in their society, a reminder that unpredictability was not rare among them. I laughed at first. I do not laugh now. The human lay still in containment as our vessel sailed past their orbital debris field. Thousands of shattered machines circled the planet, most long dead. Junk, I thought. And yet, some of those devices were still transmitting. One continued to play a song on loop, a series of notes about wandering stars. Pointless, endearing in a pitiful way. I watched the subject closely during the voyage. He remained calm, breathing evenly. I had expected at least one episode of primitive panic. Nothing. His chest rose and fell like a soldier at rest, not a captive. I made a note to mock his species further in the report. Human emotional range, disappointingly small. Reaction to abduction, boredom. And yet something gnawed at me. He did not struggle against paralysis, not even internally. Neural scans showed higher than expected stability. Most of their kind hyperventilate under stress. This one was quiet, silent, calculating, perhaps? No, impossible. On the third cycle, I passed his chamber and saw his eyes open. Wide awake. The paralysis should have held him under. I froze, though I would not admit it then. He looked directly at me, not around the room, not at the equipment, straight at me, as if he had known the exact moment I would be there. His lips moved, slowly, deliberately. The words were faint, but clear. Nice ship. And then he smiled again. I summoned the others, pretending I had planned to wake him early. It was essential to maintain control, after all. Vexer complained the paralysis field had malfunctioned. I scolded him publicly, though privately I knew the equipment was flawless, which left the impossible conclusion: the human had resisted. We restrained him with additional binds, locked his chamber with triple fail-safes, and doubled the watch. Standard procedure, though my voice carried more edge than usual when issuing the orders. I could not allow the others to sense hesitation. Later, when alone, I approached the glass once more. He was resting again, eyes closed, but his hand twitched against the bind. A rhythm, almost deliberate. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. Repeated. I did not understand it, but I felt certain it was not random. I recorded it as a potential communication pattern for later analysis. The irony was not lost on me. Here we were, emissaries of the most advanced empire in the quadrant, guardians of knowledge spanning millennia. And I, proud officer of this fleet, stood outside a glass chamber unsettled by a creature who still argues about whether pineapple belongs on cooked bread. As I dictated the day's entry, I told myself the discomfort was temporary, that the human was merely a curiosity. Primitive, yes, but occasionally surprising. A flicker of intelligence, nothing more. Those are the exact words I used. Yet as the lights dimmed for ship night, I caught myself replaying his earlier phrase, the calmness with which he said it. Nice ship. 2 words, harmless on the surface, but weighted with something I could not name. It was not gratitude, not awe, something else. As if he were appraising, measuring, already filing away strengths and weaknesses. I dismissed the thought and retired to my quarters. But sleep did not come easily. For the first time since the assignment began, I questioned our assumption. Perhaps boredom was not his reaction. Perhaps it was patience. And patience, I realized, can be far more dangerous than fear. The chamber lights flickered as though they too were uncertain about our decision. We had tripled restraints, reinforced the paralysis field, and added no fewer than 6 biometric monitors. Redundancy layered upon redundancy, as though strapping a vine around a boulder makes the vine any stronger. My colleagues considered this excessive. I considered it survival. When we initiated the reanimation sequence, I expected screaming, confusion, bargaining. That was the usual pattern. Instead, he opened his eyes slowly, deliberately, as if waking from a nap he had scheduled himself. He glanced at the chamber walls, then at us, then offered a faint smile. "Morning, gentlemen. Nice ship." The words cut sharper than they should have. Our translator rendered them faithfully, though none of us understood the calmness behind them. I had anticipated pleading, perhaps incomprehensible babble. Instead, he spoke with the poise of a host welcoming us into his home. "Do you understand us?" I asked, my tone sharpened by irritation I did not intend to reveal. "Of course," he replied smoothly. "You've been transmitting a language stream for days. I've been listening. English is a messy thing, but so is whatever you speak. Fair trade." Vexer scoffed loudly. "Coincidence. Mimicry. You parrot sounds." But then the human tilted his head, eyes flicking across us one by one. "You're the medic," he said to Vexer, always fidgeting, fingers tapping when nervous. "You," he turned to Trell, "are the pilot. Your boots carry scuff marks from engine bay dust. And you," he pointed directly at me, "are the one in charge. You hide it, but your voice lowers when you issue corrections. Authority disguised as commentary." I froze, though only for a second. Protocol demanded composure. "You presume much for a primitive." He leaned back in the chair, restraints humming faintly around his arms. Observation. It's what I do. Besides, you've been watching me. Fair to return the favor, don't you think? Something shifted then, subtle yet undeniable. The air felt thinner, as though he had stolen control of the room without moving an inch. I pressed forward with the interrogation to reassert dominance. You should not be awake. The paralysis field was calibrated for your physiology. He smiled again, maddeningly calm. Oh, I was awake during transport too. Quiet trip, if you ignore the engine hum. Left thruster vibrates more than it should. Bearings misaligned. Vexor hissed, a sound meant to intimidate. The human ignored him completely. His attention was fixed on me, and for the first time I could not hold his gaze comfortably. I reminded myself that he was bound, contained, fragile compared to us. And yet, you analyzed our vessel during paralysis? I demanded. Not paralysis, he corrected gently. Suppression. Crude suppression at that. I let it work just enough to fool you. My mind wandered. I counted vibrations, cataloged shifts in gravitational pull, even mapped your rotation pattern. It's a habit. A habit. I echoed, fighting to keep sarcasm in place. Old job. You wouldn't understand. The audacity was staggering. A captive correcting his captors, minimizing our technology as if it were amateur craft. I wanted to laugh, but my throat felt dry. We attempted formal testing then. Electroneural scans, reflex analysis, linguistic stress mapping. He participated willingly, almost eagerly, like a guest indulging curious hosts. Each response carried subtle mockery. When asked to recite a sequence of numbers, he quoted a line from an Earth film instead, grinning. I'll be back, he said in a terrible accent. None of us understood the context, though I noted the phrase with mild annoyance. He tapped the side of his restraints at one point and muttered, duct tape would be faster. We stared blankly. He saw our confusion and chuckled. You don't get it. That's fine. Nobody does until it's too late. It unsettled me more than I cared to admit. During a break in examinations, I reviewed his neural data. The patterns refused interpretation. Too intricate, too varied, firing at frequencies beyond projected capacity. Either our scanners malfunctioned, or his brain was performing calculations we could not categorize. I told myself it was equipment fatigue again, though deep down I knew better. He watched us silently through the glass as we argued. When I finally returned, determined to reassert control, he greeted me with unnerving politeness. You're hiding it well, he said. Hiding what? Unease. You think your colleagues haven't noticed, but they have. You're trying to maintain authority while doubting your tools. Admirable effort. Futile, but admirable. His eyes did not blink as he spoke. They bore into me with a precision that no so-called primitive should have possessed. I attempted mockery. You presume to know my thoughts. You are merely clever in coincidence. He tilted his head again, smile fading. No, I've been trained for this. Years ago, military background, special operations, later moved into counterintelligence and security testing. My specialty was breaking into systems designed to be unbreakable. Guess what your ship looks like to me? Vexor muttered a curse in our tongue. Trell's hands twitched at the controls. I kept still, though my pulse raced faster than I cared to admit. You lie, I declared. Do I? He countered smoothly. Because if I were lying, you wouldn't feel the need to deny it so quickly. And if I were telling the truth, well, you'd already be in trouble. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I searched his expression for mockery, but there was none. Only calm certainty, as though every step had been planned before we even captured him. You are bound, I reminded, though my voice lacked conviction. He leaned forward slightly, eyes gleaming under the chamber lights. I've already sent a message. Silence consumed the room. My colleague stiffened, exchanging uneasy glances. I demanded clarification, but he only smiled, leaning back once more as if nothing had been said. We initiated additional scans, desperate for reassurance. The results only deepened our dread. Heightened neural spikes during moments of silence, as if he were operating on frequencies outside our perception. No distress, no panic. Control, always control. When the chamber powered down for the night cycle, I remained at the glass longer than intended. He rested calmly, as though aboard his own vessel, not ours. Before turning away, I caught the faintest whisper through the intercom, so soft I questioned whether it was deliberate. Tick-tock, just that. 2 syllables. Nonsense, perhaps. Or a countdown. I returned to my quarters, but found no rest. Every hum of the engines, every flicker of light pressed against my nerves. His words echoed endlessly. I've already sent a message. For the first time, I considered the possibility that the captive was not the subject of our experiment. We were his. The chamber was designed to break minds. Endless white walls, bright illumination calibrated to disorient primitive retinas, the faint hum of resonance fields tuned to destabilize focus. Hundreds of species had cracked under its sterile glare, confessing, panicking, or simply whimpering into silence. Yet this human sat as though in a lounge, posture relaxed, eyes darting with unnerving precision to every lens and every seam in the walls. It was as though he were the examiner and we the specimens. We initiated the neural scan again, certain that equipment errors had caused the earlier anomalies. The beams probed his cortex, mapping firing patterns with excruciating detail. The results appeared on my console in jagged bursts of unreadable complexity. Lines where there should have been curves, peaks where there should have been troughs. It was not simply advanced. It was deliberate. Impossible, muttered Trell, recalibrating. Try again, I ordered. He did. The same outcome repeated. Neural signatures outside every model we possessed, as though his mind had learned to scramble, adapt, camouflage. Either he was broken or our assumptions were. Neither conclusion pleased me. The human glanced at me then, smirking faintly. You should ask your system if it enjoyed that. Explain, I demanded, though my throat tightened around the word. He shrugged. Your scanner's feedback loop is noisy. I used the resonance to feed it back. You've basically been chasing my reflection instead of me. The absurdity struck like a blow. This man, bound and caged, claimed to be manipulating equipment forged by a civilization millennia older than his own. Yet the results on my console offered no alternative explanation. Vexor hissed, a nervous tick more than a threat. He speaks nonsense. The human tilted his head, voice calm. Do I? Look left, top corner of the wall. That lens is failing. Dead pixel cluster. Been watching it flicker since I got here. We turned. He was correct. The feed sputtered. A minor defect, irrelevant under normal circumstances. Under these, it was devastating. You pay too much attention, I muttered. That's the job, he replied, tone almost casual. Pattern recognition. Spot what doesn't belong. Exploit it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every one of us realized simultaneously that he was not reacting like prey. He was mapping us, dissecting us with patience sharper than any blade. Vexor attempted to rattle him with interrogation. State your purpose. Why were you alone in your forest? Why would any soldier camp without comrades? The human chuckled softly. Soldier, yes, but no longer. Call me retired. Now I test weaknesses. Security systems, intelligence networks, infiltration countermeasures. People hire me to break things so they know where to patch them. I felt my mouth go dry. If he spoke the truth, then his presence here was not chance but catastrophe. And what, exactly, have you broken here? I asked, forcing sarcasm to veil dread. He leaned closer to the glass, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Confidence. The word landed heavier than a meteor. From then on, his responses grew stranger. When asked to recite emotional memory sequences, he quoted human films. May the force be with you, he intoned solemnly, before laughing at our blank stares. Later he declared, Houston, we have a problem. As alarms flickered briefly on our console, alarms that vanished the moment we checked. Was it coincidence, or had he somehow triggered them? He muttered names we did not recognize. Chuck Norris, for instance. He whispered it with a grin. I logged the phrase for later analysis, though unease rippled through us. He winked as if daring us to discover its meaning. To this day, we are unsure who this Norris is, but we are deeply afraid. And then there was the duct tape. Always the duct tape. You can fix anything with it, he said knowingly, as though describing a mythical weapon. We still do not understand. Each just carried weight, each joke hiding something more. He was not speaking to amuse himself. He was destabilizing us, making us question our tools, our knowledge, our control. At one point, he stared directly into the central camera and spoke as though addressing someone unseen. You hear that? They still think Earth's asleep. Then he smiled faintly and leaned back, as if awaiting a reply. We scrambled to verify transmission logs. Nothing. No signal sent, no leaks detected. And yet my stomach twisted at the possibility that he had spoken not for us, but for whomever he knew was listening. When pressed further, he revealed more than I wished to hear. You think Earth is behind. That's the game. Play weak. Look harmless. Wave your reality shows around so nobody asks questions. It works. You all laugh at us while we watch you laughing. You admit deception. I snapped, clinging to authority. Not deception, he corrected. Camouflage. His eyes locked on mine then, colder than any void. And camouflage is only useful when predators are near. That sentence haunted me instantly. Because if we were predators, then who were we to find ourselves unsettled by prey? He leaned back, expression almost bored. You keep asking me questions. Maybe you should ask yourself something instead. Why me? Out of billions, why did you choose a man whose job is dismantling security? None of us spoke. Because the truth was, we did not choose. Sensors picked a solitary figure in the woods, nothing more. A random selection, or so we thought. The idea that randomness had delivered us into this man's path chilled me more than deliberate planning would have. He studied our silence with amusement. Uncomfortable coincidence, isn't it? Feels less like chance, more like fate. I felt my arrogance slipping, crumbling like ash. The chamber meant to break him had turned against us. Each word he spoke was a scalpel carving away our certainty. At the end of that session, as we prepared to disengage the systems, he dropped the final shard into our hearts. I told you earlier I sent a message, he reminded casually. Yes, I said tightly. An empty threat. He smiled, not mocking but pitying. Empty? Maybe. Or maybe you just haven't realized which of your systems answers to me now. The lights flickered once more. Every console beeped in unison. Then silence. Perfect silence. He reclined calmly in his restraints, as though nothing had happened. My colleagues scrambled to run diagnostics, shouting over one another. I stood frozen, eyes locked on the man inside the glass. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes told me the game had already shifted. And for the first time, I wondered not whether he was lying, but how much truth he had decided to leave unspoken. The first flicker seemed like nothing. A harmless surge, the kind of electrical hiccup that occurs when lesser ships travel through ion storms. But our vessel was no lesser craft. It had withstood nebulae, radiation fields, even the corrosive atmosphere of Vera Prime. Lights did not flicker here, unless something had gone terribly wrong. The human looked up immediately, as if he had been waiting for it. There we go, he murmured, not loud enough to be conversation, yet perfectly audible through the intercom. Vexor cursed and scrambled across his console. Power fluctuation in secondary grid. Impossible. Trell snapped, running diagnostics. All systems report nominal. But I knew what I'd seen. And more than that, I knew the expression on the human's face. Calm. Expectant. He was not reacting to the flicker. He was acknowledging it. Explain yourself, I demanded, pressing closer to the chamber glass. He tilted his head, amused. Why should I? You wouldn't believe me. You've been telling yourselves stories about primitive Earth. Keep telling them if it makes you feel better. Another surge rocked the vessel. This time, gravity fluctuated, pulling us briefly toward the ceiling before stabilizing again. My limbs ached from the strain. The human simply smiled. Stop whatever you are doing, I barked. He raised an eyebrow. Doing? I'm not moving a muscle. That's the beauty of it. We tore into the systems, checking containment, scanning for breaches, rerouting energy. The ship responded sluggishly, as if resisting our commands. Vexor shouted that subsystems were collapsing one by one. Trell swore the autopilot was ignoring manual overrides. And through it all, the human sat bound, serene, like a king upon a throne carved from our panic. You used a neural scan? I whispered suddenly, realization dawning. He looked directly at me, eyes glinting. Finally, took you long enough. I felt my stomach twist. He had not merely endured our technology, he had weaponized it. The scanning beam we used to map his brain, he had inverted. Reverse mapped the ship, piggyback signals into our control lattice. He had been hacking us with nothing but his own mind. You cannot, I stammered, though the words rang hollow, possibly comprehend our systems. He chuckled softly. I don't need to comprehend everything. Just enough. Weaknesses are universal. Find a crack, wedge it open. Same rule on Earth, same rule in space. The chamber lights dimmed. Our ship's AI spoke, voice distorted. Containment protocols reassigned. Reassigned. To whom? I already knew the answer. Doors sealed shut across the vessel. My colleagues' panicked voices echoed through comms as entire sectors locked down. Trell reported losing helm control. Vexor screamed as medbay systems purged themselves. The human had turned our own intelligence against us, isolating us chamber by chamber. This is sabotage, I declared, though the word felt meaningless. He smiled faintly. Sabotage implies hostility. Think of it as redecoration. I slammed my fist against the glass. Why? Why reveal this? You could have remained hidden. Because, he said calmly, you need to understand. You think Earth is weak. It isn't. We've been preparing, watching, waiting, pretending to be behind while we studied all of you. Playing dumb works when predators are arrogant. And you are very arrogant. The truth cut deeper than any blade. We had laughed at their burritos, their memes, their crude combustion engines. All camouflage, all theater. You lie, Vexor shouted over comms, desperation cracking his voice. But the human only shook his head. I don't need to lie. Earth's defenses are real. Cloaked satellites, deep space monitors, countermeasures hidden in plain sight. You thought we were just shouting about reality TV and celebrity drama. We were listening while you weren't. The ship shuddered violently. I nearly lost balance. Warning sirens blared. Critical systems offline. Yet the human sat perfectly still, eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. What do you intend? I asked, though dread already clawed at my chest. Intend. He chuckled. I don't need to intend anything. The message is already sent. You can't stop it. Earth knows you're here. And now Earth knows you can be beaten. A chill ran through me colder than a vacuum outside. If he spoke the truth, then our secrecy was shattered. Our empire's most guarded advantage undone by a single man with nothing but patience and a smile. Trell's voice trembled over comms. Central AI refuses commands. It recognizes only one authority now. I didn't want to ask, but I had to. Whose authority? The human leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the glass. Mine. The lights went out. Total darkness. My species evolved to see in infrared, yet even our enhanced vision found nothing. The ship had buried itself in a cloak deeper than any emergency protocol. Systems were alive but silent, obeying a new master. His voice broke the stillness. Calm, soft, terrifying. You thought this was your experiment. It isn't. It never was. I was testing you. I wanted to deny it, but the words would not come. Every fragment of arrogance I once held had evaporated. I stood before a bound creature who had conquered us without lifting a weapon, who had turned captivity into dominion. Release us, I whispered finally. He considered, then leaned back again. I could, and I will. But remember this, next time knock. Don't creep through shadows. Don't assume weakness, because Earth is watching. Always. The systems roared back online. Lights flared, doors unlocked, power surged with blinding force. He remained his chair, still bound, as though nothing had happened. Yet we knew. He had given back control not because we reclaimed it, but because he allowed it. Vexor trembled openly. Trell refused to meet my gaze. I forced myself to record the log, though my voice quavered where once it had dripped with sarcasm. What lesson had we learned? That humans are not to be underestimated. That their humor, their absurdities, Their chaotic culture conceal a patience sharper than steel. They wield unpredictability as weapon, camouflage as shield. And we, arrogant conquerors, were reduced to frightened children before one man. As the chamber powered down, he closed his eyes, drifting into something that looked like sleep. I envied him then, for though we had survived, our certainty had not. I end this entry with the only truth that remains clear. We believed ourselves predators. We believed ourselves conquerors. Yet in the shadow of this species, we became the conquered. And I fear they have only just begun.